Alright, hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm on location at Carriage Metro Park in Dayton, and it's a place that's actually my second visit. It took about a year in between my first visit and today and now, and it's pretty much the same for the most part. The main thing I'm here for is I parked right next to Cedar Lake, and it's a decently sized lake. It's not the largest one I've ever seen, at least in southwestern Ohio, but it's definitely always got lots of common waterfowl and other kind of geese and Canada geese, at least mallard ducks, and then also it can have some domestic variety of mallards, and it has obviously kind of spring migrants and also different kinds of waterfowl, fall migrants even. So today I think the find of the day, from what I can tell today, is I think there's about 7-ish of I believe to be buffleheads, and which is pretty awesome to see. So I can check that off for my life list. And the cool thing about that is I didn't get any photo, unfortunately, of them, but I could tell from a distance they had like the white patch on the female does on the side of their heads, and they had like the all kind of brown, almost kind of gray body, and then the males had more patches of white on their head as well, in non-breeding plumage at least, so they didn't have the iridescent kind of green and reds that's kind of patched on the side of their head there. But it was a really good, nice find, seeing the buffalo head there. I'm thinking it is, at least. I don't think it didn't look like because at first I thought it was a hooded merganser, and at least the group it was, but I don't think it was by any chance. I looked through my binoculars and they're still pretty far away, so it's hard to tell without, if I went up closer to them, I'd spook them a lot more, and that'd be a really big problem. But unfortunately, I think other people on the boardwalk here, while I was over on this side, because they're on this side right next to kind of where I'm standing, honestly, on this boardwalk here. I guess they got spooked and they went all the way to the other side of the lake there, and unfortunately then they just kind of disappeared. I don't know, I turned my head for a few seconds to photograph a gull and a kingfisher that was perched. Both of those are perched pretty close by, and then I turned and looked and the group was just gone. So unfortunately, a little bit of a bummer, but yeah, this is a good lake. I like this one quite a bit, just for photographing different kinds of bird species, water birds in particular. and like I said, gulls. I've seen quite a few today flying overhead, and if you're lucky, you get to see them perch on different little tree snags and driftwood that's out in the lake. So I got a few decent photos of that, for example. One, it looks like some gentleman over here just a little bit ago threw out some feed. I don't know what it was, like maybe some kind of seed or whatever for the geese and ducks. So now they're all kind of congregating over here and watching them, still just kind of hanging out and feeding right by the edge of the lake there. But yeah, so it's been a pretty productive morning overall for photographing waterfowl and birds in general. I might see if I can continue and keep up that success, just because I find wildlife shooting is always a little more difficult, for me at least, than landscapes or anything else or macro of that sorts. So I might see if I can keep it up and shoot some smaller songbirds in the woodland here, especially hoping to get some more winter time kind of resonance here, and hopefully I have some luck with that. If not, I'm not going to complain. I got quite a few good shots of the different water birds, like I said, here, and then I'll just switch lenses, switch gears, and do some landscapes, and yeah, we'll see how that goes at least. But fortunately, the lighting is very, very diffuse and cloudy. The sun's just kind of peeking out some light, just enough to kind of bring in, level up the exposures there, without obviously blowing out highlights and being just a very kind of bland looking sunny sky. So yeah, it's going to be pretty cloudy for, it looks like, most of the day. It's very heavy coverage overhead, but which would be pretty nice, I think. And then also along the ways here is another kind of boardwalk or whatever on the other side I'm looking at over here, and that actually has constructed wetlands, which of course I'm always a big fan of. Wetlands are one of my favorite habitats to photograph in and just to view different plant life and the flora and fauna. So we're going to check that out next, and we'll see how that turns out. And then later on, there's about totaled about 5-ish miles worth of trails here. As always, I'm going to start with the biggest one, which is the Orange Trail. It's about, I think, about 3.2 miles, and it takes you basically a giant perimeter around the metro park here, at least for the hiking trails at least. And so I'm going to start with that, and then just work my way down the smaller ones. And the smallest one, I believe, is the red one, which the red trail just takes you loops around the lake here. So I think that'd be a nice way to round out the whole trip. Just taking one last time, to look through, look at the entire lake and see if any new species come in for winter time here, which would be very nice, and get some nice viewing opportunities and hopefully photographing opportunities as well. So like I said, wetlands are one of my favorite habitats. They're very important to the environment and for humanity, honestly. We need them to filter out pollutants out of our water and provide us with safe and drinking water. And not only that, but it benefits the wildlife too, where it brings in all this kind of unique and diverse plant ecosystems and different wildlife that a lot of species at least depend on wetlands in particular, just because that's the habitat that they prefer to be in, and it's just the way they've adapted to it. So yeah, I'm hoping for the best with that, at least over here. The rest of the trails here, at least, it takes you through some decently sized prairie, which I'll be looking forward to. Hopefully I get some sparrow photographing opportunities there. We can only hope. And then also lots of woodland. So hoping for some woodland birds, or maybe, like I said, I can switch out and do some landscapes as well. So overall, it's been a nice start to the day with Cedar Lake here. I think I'm going to continue on the trails here. But let me just tell you a little bit more about Carriage Hill. So obviously I focus more on the natural features and the hiking aspect of the metro park here, but there's also lots of different, it's basically this whole area, this whole property was a historical farmstead. And so if you bring your kids along, we got the farm animals and all that sorts over there. They have a decent sized kind of not really a gift shop, but it has it's a place where I picked up, it's basically a nature center, I guess. I picked up all the different kind of field guides and trail maps for all the 5 Rivers Metro Parks here, and that's a nice place to visit just to learn more about this area in particular, and just the whole organization's diverse natural areas that they preserve like this. So I just got some of my best photos ever of Carolina wren. Got a batch of them at least, very up close. It's, you know, pretty much almost about 2 arms lengths away from me. And I had my big telephoto lens here at 150 millimeters, which meant no matter what the widest aperture it is, I think I had about f6.3 on this, those collection of shots. That means that it's going to be really tack sharp, because the farther out I zoom on this lens, especially with the variable aperture, it means if I'm all the way out at 600 like I do for most of my wildlife and bird portraits with this bird photos, is that it means it gets softer and softer. If you zoom in and crop in on the image and you look at, even no matter what, if you focus on the eye, it'll still look blurry no matter what. But in this case, it was tack sharp. It was not so much frame filling, but it definitely showed enough of detail of the area around the wren, where it showed the tree, you know, the tree branches, and especially the one it's hanging off of, facing downward. But it was making eye contact with the side of its face, and like I said, obviously I focused right on the eye there. So I think those turn out great. Like I said earlier, the diffused lighting, the overcast, cloudy sky, just made perfect lighting for the situation, and I think the colors look honestly pretty fantastic. So I'm really stoked about those. Alright, I'm not surprised, but I switched up, like I said, to landscapes here, at least briefly. I might switch back to birds or something else otherwise. But right now I'm focusing on this coniferous trees right behind me. And while the rest of the prairie tall grass plants and flowers are all lying dormant right now, or this time of year, these coniferous trees just have bursting of color that just really work well against the rest of the bare trees, primarily deciduous trees that are surrounding them. So I'm going to use that to my advantage here and try out something that's a little more contrasty to what I'm used to. So I have my small telephoto at 150 millimeters, and I'm just really pulling apart, cropping real tight on these, vertically at least, these coniferous trees here. And it just really shows the contrast of the kind of oranges and greens of these pine needles. And the thing I really like about this, like I said, the primary thing about these photos is contrast. And the thing with these bright, you know, kind of orange and greens and kind of really earthy tones and some browns there, are just lying against and are surrounded by these really kind of dull grays. And it just really puts, I feel like, emphasis on the subject and puts it first and foremost in the frame here. So it's a little fun thing I'm experimenting with at the moment. I'm just trying out different kind of angles, composition, eye level, crouching down, looking up. Usually keep at the same focal length here. Camera settings are staying primarily the same. My aperture is around the f10 range, which I find works well. With this cloudy and diffused light, that means that lighting is a little bit harder to come by, so I'm having to raise my ISO as well. And I've been shooting these handheld just because this lens has image stabilization or a vibration reduction control on it. And obviously when I shoot handheld with this lens, I set that to on, and that just means I can shoot with a little bit less than normal slower shutter speeds. And yeah, it just makes a nice even exposure, and yeah, nice subject. So I'm just gonna keep experimenting with it here and see honestly what comes of it. But so far I'm liking the results, and yeah, look forward to what's to come here. I'm not sure which is my favorite, honestly. There's just so many different configurations, combinations, and you know, working with I don't want to call it limitations of the camera, but just like there's just so many subject matter and material to work with, and just the different colors, different shapes, sizes, the composition. I mean, honestly, I did some horizontal ones where I just kind of stacked two of them right kind of in the center of the frame. I don't know, pleasing to the eyes. And then wrapped around it is all the different kind of white and beige prairie grass. And it just looks so amazing. I don't know. I'm really getting the creative juices flowing with this trip here. So it's been very, very nice. So we'll keep along the trail. And we'll see what else we can find. But so far, it's actually been a very nice day out, at least for the photos. Very productive, and it's honestly quite surprising because some of these videos, it's harder to make photos for, or maybe just the inspiration. Something just does not click quite as much. Very few days where I'm actually just all out, like nothing comes of it. But yeah, I'm liking the results here today. So hopefully the success and the luck continues for the rest of it. Alright, so that pretty much concludes the orange trail, at least. I got a little bit, look at the map over here, if you're wondering. Yeah, so from this point on this way, this direction, looks like towards the kind of southwest direction is the orange and yellow. And so that'll conclude it. It starts to wrap around the pond, Cedar Lake, just a little bit off that way. So yeah, I'm pretty much done with the longest trail, fortunately. So it should be fairly smooth sailing because looks like the green and yellow both kind of retread on the same path for like more than half of it, which is pretty nice. And then the red one's pretty self-explanatory because, like I said earlier, it just wraps around Cedar Lake there. So that should be nice and easy. I also just want to point out, while I'm thinking about it, is just the way woodland photography and landscape photography in kind of the winter time is a lot more difficult. At least I think it can be, but you could argue the same for even summer when all the green foliage just looks the same. You could say the same for winter here, is that it all looks the same. Majority of the trees, at least, are pretty bare, and it makes it just kind of samey and hard to really find some kind of reason to photograph or like a subject to really focus on, at least in the wide angle perspective and sense of it. So yeah, it's been a little difficult. I just mainly been hiking for a while now, just kind of looking around, enjoying the scenery. Alright, so I knew it would happen. I'd come back to the lake towards the end of my trip here today, and I'd probably see something different. So I saw either, I don't know what kind of scalp it is, but it's either a lesser or a greater. I tried looking at identification of both of them to differentiate, and it's just kind of tricky. So I believe this is the first time I've ever seen them. Pretty awesome. Two females and one male, which I can't complain. I got a decent doc shot of them, documentation photo. So hopefully I'll put it at the end of the video anyways, just to show it at least. So I believe it is my first sighting of them, which is pretty awesome. And then also apparently the buffalo heads were still here. At least I saw a couple of the male ones with their striking, black and white kind of crest, and the almost like a headdress, I guess you call it. That is their head. As you can tell, the sun's coming out now. It's kind of not too harsh though, fortunately. So I've still been taking photos. I've been practicing some in-flight of those lesser greater scopes or scalps. Is it scalp? And then also the gull is over here hanging out still against this little driftwood over here, perched on it at the moment. There's still tons of Canada geese and mallards down there. Alright guys, unfortunately I'm going to have to cut the video short here. I'm really impressed, honestly, very surprised at how many different kind of variety of subjects and just the amount of photos I've taken today of just different landscapes, treescapes, abstracts, lots of wildlife, which I'm very happy about, because I'm always happy to take new bird species and photograph them, you know, along with seeing them for the first time. So yeah, I'm really impressed with the results here, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something as well, or at the very least you're entertained and enjoyed coming along with me on my travels here. So thank you so much for watching, guys. This has been Carriage Hill Metro Park, and until next time, make sure you get out here. Thank you.